my parents were different. You know, usually when you migrate from Africa to Australia to a Western country, you as parents also want to assimilate to the society, right, and to the community. So I'm a child running through here, they're going through visa problems trying to get us to stay in Australia, right? One thing my parents always did was believed in us. I used to see mum, you know, going to work for Qantas. You know, in those times, there was no black people working for Qantas. Qantas is the premium airline in Australia. And people would tell my mum, are you crazy? You want to go work for Qantas? Which black person have you seen working for Qantas? It's, you know, you'll never get it. Mum went and got that job, premium airline, working for Qantas back in those days. If I said I want to go to Europe and pursue my football dreams, most African parents would, be realistic. No, don't do those things, you know, go to university. Mum and dad always supported. Hi, my name is Sugira Rubasha. I'm the CEO of ETS Rubasha Media and the co-founder of the Rubasha Family Podcast. I live in Australia. I am originally from Kenya and Rwanda. We are based in Australia, but also have bases here in Kenya, United States, and all around the world. So I'm someone who is just out there to achieve my dreams, tell my story, and help other people do the same thing. So what motivates me to come out and tell my story out on the world, where we live in a time where a lot of people don't want to do that or are shy to do that? What motivates me is legacy. You know, when I first started my journey on YouTube, I was 22, 23. I was in America and Auntie said to me, like, why don't you start a YouTube channel? And then I'll be like, no, I want to do that when I'm there, when I make it. You know, I was playing football, you know, on that journey. And then it hit me, I said, you know what? Like, why don't I document what I'm doing so that my children's children can watch it? Like, they can literally watch it. I'm not going to tell them the stories. I'll be like, hey, if you don't believe me, you can go and watch it, so that they can go and watch life, how I met their mum, seeing their grandparents, their ancestors. And so that has always made me want to come out, and why I'm sitting here today on such an amazing show is to tell my story, because someone out there can be inspired, they can be motivated. You know, and again, this is what we call legacy. When it's all said and done, you know, we're going to be in museums because we came out and tell their story. And that's something that we also motivate other people to do. Come out and tell your story, because it builds also your personal brand. For any business owner, entrepreneur out there, even just in general, you all have a personal brand. And part of that personal brand is you coming out and telling your story. And when you do that, that's when the magic happens. So growing up, the influences I would see of people telling their story. Okay, so growing up, I moved to Kenya. I was born in Kenya and moved to Australia when I was 3 years old. Dad's from Rwanda, mum's from Kenya. So when we moved to Australia, there was not many Africans at all. That's with the time. We were the first people to come to Australia, like we like to joke, because there was no black people. You know, mum worked a job at Kenya Airways, so she had a good job. Dad was running businesses, and he was from Rwanda. So he obviously had escaped the war. And then, so he migrated to Kenya. And so there was a little bit of issues with his passport, and, you know, they were chasing Rwandese out of the country, something like that. So that was always the fear within our family. So we moved to Australia, and in regards to seeing people out there, we'd have little small parties. You know, when you want to live in a community, Kenyan, we bring over Kenyan people, laugh, talk. And it was when we see people like Michael Jackson and everyone's there listening to music and we're there dancing. In those days, you never really saw this documenting the journey. Those were the closest people we saw who would come out there. If I think about it now, we're personal brand because they're musicians, artists. So it'd be the people from America. You know, the ones out there we see on TV. And that's the powerful thing about it now. When we think about it, the times have changed. Now you don't need to be a huge star to tell your story. You have an iPhone, you can do it. So that was the closest that we would have as children growing up to see influences or people documenting that journey. I don't remember being born in Kenya. I hear stories about how I used to be as a child, but I don't remember that. So I remember growing up in Australia, and I remember when we first migrated a little bit, we met people within the church in community. Mr. Brown, he runs a church in Australia, and the church really took us in. So I remember always going to church. I remember us having a house that we stayed in, and just me and my brothers. My youngest brother was a baby. And I just remember being a child, living in Australia. I didn't know it's Australia. I didn't know what my parents were going through. Of course, yeah, you're just a child. When I look, memorable moments in my life as a child was, hanging out with dad, for example, going to go take us to, he used to go and take us to play tennis. So, because from Rwanda, tennis was a sport that was the class he would play, because he came from a wealthy family. We went to go play tennis. He used to take us to the lessons, didn't like it. And then football was what we fell in love with. I remember watching football from a young age, and mum's dad, our grandfather, was a big footballer here in Kenya, Jonathan Neva. So football ran in our blood. So a lot of my childhood, I remember just football. Waking up, I used to be the kid, ever since I was younger, was someone who was determined, and I got that from my mum. The way I would speak from a young age, I could just go and speak to people. And so I was very confident from such a young age. My imagination was out there. So football was just everything. So going matches on the weekend with dad, mum taking you can hear mum shouting, scoring a goal. I used to go and just score 10 goals. I was just really a good player. So yeah, moments like that, going there. And then I remember going to primary school. In primary school, you're surrounded by white people. And because we were the only black kids there, you'd feel like, I wish I was white. Yeah, you start to be like, man, all the Greek, and a lot of these Greek kids, for example, they're very proud to be Greek, which is, when I think back later on, a lot of things make sense in life. But yeah, so you'd want to, oh man, why do I have to be black? You'd want to be lighter, So I also remember going through moments like that. When you're younger, you go through identity crisis, or, you want to figure out who you are in the world. So yeah, growing up in Australia, the kids would say racist jokes, and you'd just kind of feel like, you'd feel the odd one out and you'd want to fit in. So I think definitely, I remember in high school, I think a kid called me the N-word, and then I went and told the teacher, and the teacher was like, how would you feel if you were in his country and they all started teasing you or something like that? And I looked at the teacher, I'm like, what the hell? What type of punishment is that? And the kid was like, okay, and walked away. And it just felt, I remember that feeling, felt bad. You just feel like you want to be like everyone else. So I think those were, experiences growing up in high school as well. It's like, those little racist jokes will come. When I look at it older, that whole topic of racism, I think it's a distraction as well. I think it's a huge distraction that they've been using brilliantly to just have us distracted. Right now, I don't believe in that word racism, but that is bullying, right? It's just, let's just bully. But you feel like any child who gets bullied, you feel that you want to just fit in and be part of it. So I think because of playing football and being in sports so much, when you're on the football field, they don't care what skin color you are. If you're good, everyone's going to like you. And there'll still even be moments where sometimes you're good, someone may abuse you racially, but again, that's just bullying. So I think being an athlete and playing in sport, it's like it removed racism in a way, because that's where you made your friends. I made my friends playing football. Being in that team community, they don't care white, black, we all play together, it's all one. So I think being in sport definitely helped me, go through that. So did I feel any way less? Yes, there are moments you would too. Maybe in the classroom, a teacher may say a comment, or again, there could be a small racist joke. And then there's this notion that black people aren't smart, intelligent, and you grow up believing those thoughts. If you're not careful. So Yeah. There's two answers in that. So there's the answer where it's like, no, not really. I wouldn't feel it because of the sport and community. But then there's moments that I would feel that way. And you only get out of that when you know who you are. And you know that if they're saying something, more times they're jealous of you, they want to be like you, they admire you. And then that kind of but that's when you have to know who you are. So the roles my parents played in me growing up and setting the foundation. My parents were different. Usually when you migrate from Africa to Australia to a Western country, you as parents also want to assimilate to the society, right? And to the community. So I'm a child running through here. They're going through visa problems trying to get us to stay in Australia, right? One thing my parents always did was believed in us. They always believed in us, because most African parents, you got to go to university, you got to go get straight A's, you got to do this, you got to be a doctor. They want to feel proud that their children are doctor, dentist, so you have to follow those things, right? You got to help your parents out as soon as you start earning money, like these things. It's African parents, that's how it is, right? But my parents were never like that. If I said I want to go to Europe and pursue my football dreams, most African parents would, be realistic. No, don't do those things, go to university. Mum and dad always supported. I used to see mum, going to work for Qantas. In those times, there was no black people working for Qantas. Qantas is the premium airline in Australia. And people would tell my mum, are you crazy? You want to go work for Qantas? Which black person have you seen working for Qantas? It's, you'll never get it. Mum went and got that job. Premium airline, working for Qantas back in those days. So what mum and dad did, dad dropping us to football training. Even if they couldn't, they'd had to take different hours in work just so they can go and support us on what we used to do. Only up until we were teenagers and we were able to do things ourselves, and then we're going to go leave work and take us to training because we can go ourselves. But one thing, they always believed in us, no matter what their family would say, sisters would say, I believe in my children. And mum and dad would fight for us. Mum would ride, and whatever you want to do it. And so that was a huge foundation from the home. That's why, I'm doing this. That's why not how many people can have a podcast with their father. I sit down with my father, have a podcast. How many fathers can do that? So I feel the difference was dad also, being an African father, spent time with his children. My grandfather, Jonathan Neva, he was, played for Harambee Stars. He went and coached in Germany, which is interesting. I went and played in Germany, can speak German. So it just ran in my blood. And I've always been someone, no matter what I do, even running a business, I'm obsessed. Like, I get obsessed. So I was the type of person, I was kicking imaginary footballs, playing in stadiums. Like, from a very young age, I was really crazy. Like, reading biographies, Steven Gerrard. I was a big Liverpool fan. I still am, because Harry Kewell was an Australian player. So he used to play for Liverpool. And then I fell in love with Liverpool. And, again, I was just that person who was just addicted. If you speak to any of my family, just football was my life. When I was 6 years old, I registered for my first club, Sans Souci, which was a local football team. And so I was playing there, and I just knew where to go. Ball would come, I'd be top scorer, finishing. Like, I was really good. Just kind of that talent was already there. It ran from the family. So that was something that I just kept doing. I remember, those ages 6, 7, 8, going to different tournaments, traveling interstate in Australia, playing, against different teams and county leagues, and, parents coming, and, it was just my life. In Australia, we used to watch the English Premier League. So I'd be waking up 3, 4, 2 in the morning, because, Australia's quite far. Time zone to watch Premier League games, Then we used to go and travel to London, because mum's sisters are in London, and we had staff travel. Mum worked, because she worked in the airline, we can get staff travel to travel. So we used to, even through our young ages, travel around the world. So I went to London, and I was in football, 7, 8 years old, aunties on the couch talking about football. I was the type of person, I would come to London and I would just go out, see where people were playing football, and I would have friends. And I would just have friends. And these became friends I still talk to today. You get to a point, okay, you go, let's say 10, 11 years old. This is the way my career progressed. 10, 11 years old, you start to go into the higher teams, which is the representative team. So you represent different counties. I remember being selected to play for St. George, which was like the representative team. And we still had to pay. All the kids pay a fee, registration fee. That was a little bit high because you're in the representative team. So I remember playing in the representative team in Sydney. Now it's higher stakes, more pressure. So still going through school, never really cared about school. I was more in the lunch breaks. I'd go recess, run and play football. That's how I remember school. Really, I never really had time for school. I was not really good at homework. I just did bare minimum just to get through. Bare minimum was my efforts. My homework was reading biographies of my favorite players. Steven Gerrard, I read his biography like 4 or 5 times. Reading at a young age. I would never have picked up a book, but because of football, because of how much I loved it, I would do that. So I was playing, you're going 13, 14, playing representative teams. And then now I transitioned in high school. And so we went to one of the biggest private schools in Australia. The Scots College. I actually did a podcast interview with the principal the other day. So we went to a really big private school, again, sacrifices from my parents, to just being different. They never went and got a mortgage like everyone else. They wanted to support their children. Everything was their children. We're investing in our children. So we went to private school. They also had a football team. So now I'm navigating playing at higher teams, but I'm at a private school, which is a little bit more commitment because, in a private school, it's not like a public school. There's differences, certain commitments that you have to go to. You got to play on this. It was compulsory to even play sports. So I'm having to play my rep team and then also have to play on the school team as well. So that also brought a little bit of conflicts. And because it was such a big school, I even had to stop playing my representative teams to focus on playing on the school teams. So yeah, that was now my childhood, now growing up, going to high school in Australia. Again, you're going to a private school, only black kid. Now you're hanging around with wealthy children, and yeah, it was a great experience. Yes, we were the popular kids again a little bit because we stood out. Then you're still going through those identity crises a little bit. But again, football was just life. So now I'm playing at a high level, training every single day. And that's really my high school ages. And so as I'm going through high school, I'm thinking, people are talking about the exams or, your HSC, which is year 12, your last exams before you finish, you got to go to university. What do you want to do? I wasn't hearing none of that. I was actually looking to go play to college in America, where you can play football and then study at the same time. That was actually my focus. I was looking at that. And then through some other circumstances, I went to America because I was emailing. You see, I was that kid, I was just obsessed. So in school, as the teacher's talking, I was emailing teams that I can go and trial for in America. So I'm looking at what do I want to do when I'm 17, 18. So through my high school ages, I'm playing, about to finish high school, and that's where people are looking at university, people looking at, exams. I was starting to look at, okay, how can I go play college in America? Looking at SAT scores. Then I figured, okay, I messaged an MLS team, which is a professional team in America. They replied to my email. Imagine me, I'm 16, 17, sending emails like that. And I've always been good at words. Even then, I knew how to write a really good email. I'm passionate. This is what I do, organized. Then I got an opportunity to Philadelphia. I was with my mum. They said, come and trial. I said, hey, can I come for a trial? MLS team. And they said, they looked, I sent some video. And actually, the video that I sent wasn't even my video, it was my brother. And he was quick, he was strong. So yeah, just like I'm black, there's a bunch of white kids, they just think it's me. So I actually used his video and then they brought me and said, yeah, this is good, come over. So 17, again, mum supporting me. Mum's like, I'll go with you there. I remember we applied for an Esther. In America, you have to apply for an Esther. And I don't know, I was doing it, so I panicked a little bit. Basically, we got denied the Esther. So you have to, once you get denied the Esther, you got to go apply for a visa. So then I went in, applied for a visa, and the visa they gave me was 6 months instead of being 3 months. I remember going to the office, me and mum getting the paperwork. We get a B1 visa, which is a 6-month visa. You see how God has a plan for everything. I was denied a 3-month visa, got a 6-month visa. So I head over to Philadelphia. It was amazing, the facilities, now you're in America. So it's like, and I guess I always had the vision. Australia was a little bit slow with things. Australia's always been a slow country, still is quite slow. So again, when I was doing my research there, I get a laptop for school. I'm doing my research. I started to see America. It's not like Europe, but they're investing. So boom, I went over to Philadelphia Union, amazing facilities. It was like wow, like it was just wow for me. And I feel something that impacted me in my football career, when I think about it, my dad actually spoke about it, that because I loved it so much, I had a lot of fear. What about if I don't make the team? Or, even though you could do all the training you want to do, but if you're not in that state of, you're kind of in the begging kind of like frequency where you're nervous, so I kind of let fear dictate me a little bit, which we can go on later. But so yeah, I didn't make the team. It was like I did a week trial. It was great. They told me I didn't make it, but I ended up staying in America, and I said, I'm not going until I sign for a team, basically. Yeah. And I was going and staying with mum at like family, because mum, she knows everyone around the world. She knows people, that's how Africa, mum, so she knew everyone. So we had different families. So we stayed with one, mum went back to Australia, and I traveled and I'm 16, like now I'm 17 years old, traveled by myself, going to stay at different people's houses. I ended up signing for a team, San Jose Earthquakes, which is an MLS team. And again, there, actually before there, I had to go to London. Went to London and did more training. So now I was training because I knew I was coming back to the States, because I got that 6-month visa now. You see, God's timing. So even though I didn't make that team, so yeah, went over to the UK, staying again, family's house, just playing. I headed back to the States. I'm still around 17 years old here. And then trialed for a team, made that team, San Jose Earthquakes. And now I'm 17, turning 18, and I just signed for my first MLS team in an academy. And that was huge for me. Like, wow, you did it. So signed over for a team. All the work that I was doing was working. And, you just go in that freedom. When you play, again, without fear and have the freedom, as a footballer, I'm one of the best out there when I'm at that phase. So dominated that, playing in America, and then again going through that. So now I'm living by myself, different place. Mum was helping me, but I was living my dream. When I will think about it now, I was living my dream. What I was looking forward to more was accomplishing more. There was way more. How can I get a contract? How can I get someone to pay me $200,000 a year doing this every single day? And again, like that was just what I wanted. It was just my life. Like, I love doing this. So I'm there in America playing. Then I had some issues with my team. I wasn't getting game time. Again, the love and the passion, when things don't work out, you're so obsessed with things, it plays on your mind. So I was having issues, once I didn't get on the starting team, then, I kind of got pushed out, went over to another team. I just met connections, met people on the way. You just form friendships with people, certain connections. I went over to Portland, stayed in Portland. I traveled to Portland, USA. So I was trialing for a team, Portland Timbers. I remember I didn't make the team at the time, but then later on they needed a player, and then I signed for them. So there, I'm in Portland, in America, Oregon. I'm living with Americans, living the dream, man. Young Australian. And then I'm in America going training, coming back home, chilling with my friends, traveling to Florida and different places, like playing in tournaments, staying in hotels. Like, that's when I felt like I'm living my dream. Even if it's the academy, I'm not getting paid much, but I'm traveling around places like America. I mean, that was amazing. I think the exposure that being in America at a young age taught me was what's possible in the world, and at a young age, seeing how different people live. So now I'm very good at adapting in different audiences. I can go anywhere around the world and I make friends with people. A little bit of that is still, maybe my DNA and who I am, but still being exposed at that age, seeing different things, being in America, seeing how things run here, the opportunities I had access to. And then even in saying that, because of who I was and what I was doing, an opportunity opened up with Rwanda. They were going for the Olympics, and they called me into the under-23 team. And that got through an opportunity, through a Rwandese person, through Australia, through outside mum and dad, maybe even talking to them. I think he had connections with dad and he was in the media. and I got called up for the Rwanda under-23 team. Again, which was a huge experience, flying, getting your ticket booked to go to Rwanda, and that's my country. I hadn't been there. I hadn't been in Rwanda, so that was my first time coming. First time coming to Rwanda was through the national team. Off the pitch, I had an amazing time because, again, I'm here playing football in America, seeing different places. So off the pitch, I wasn't really going through many struggles, talking with mum and dad. The only struggle that I was going through would be if it was to do with football, if I wasn't playing, if I was on the bench, if I wasn't having good sessions. That was really my only, headspace, but everything else, no. I'd wake up in the morning, go and train by myself, get the ball against the wall. I'd find people, get coaches. Like my technical ability was just out of this world, something that I still have to this day, just training. So my life was amazing. Like, if I think about struggles, maybe at the time, again, it would be in related to the football and the thing, but no. And then being young, chasing women in a way, like, you're meeting other people, have an accent, just kind of the off moments, were really cool, hanging out with friends. That was like those memories you remember for the rest of your life. Yes, so after the academy, now in America, what happens is people start thinking about going to college and playing college. I didn't really want to go to college, but I was like, maybe it's an option. I had some college fly me out and, get me to come in and see what life is like as a college athlete. I went there. It was cool, being flown out again. And obviously my experience with the national team. So I was flown out to a campus in America, trained with them and kind of saw their facilities. It was okay for me, but I was just like, that time away from football. You spend quite a lot of time away from football. I think you can only play for 3 months. It just didn't fit. I didn't want to do school. I didn't want anything to do with school. I just wanted to play ball. So then that led me to going to Germany. I had an agent that contacted me to travel to Germany for some trials and get into some teams over there. So yeah, that was when the American journey ended. Traveled over to Germany at the age of 18. Now I'm 18, 19 in Germany. New place. And yeah, started my football career there. So the reason for me traveling at so many different places around the world, at such a young age, I guess I was just used to it. I was used to it from the ages of 13. I was going and traveling to London, Brussels, seeing different family members. So I was used to traveling and I loved it. I hate being stuck in just one place. That's why still today I still have to travel. So I hated being stuck in just one place and I always wanted more. So I was fine. For me, I could be in a homeless ditch somewhere. As long as I'm playing football, I was happy. So that's just how I've been, no matter what, through my life. So, and that's why I could just travel and go to different places. I'm in a new country. I'm in Germany. Like, they're speaking German out here. But as long as I could go to a football pitch, I was happy. So my experience in Germany was awesome. Again, football ran our lives. So the reason I was there was for football. So the people I was staying with, some too from America, South Korea, because we're all playing football. So English was kind of universal language. We all just made friends because we're in that football. So now integrating into the German society, of course, we'd come out of the house, there'd be Germans out there, but we'd be playing the football pitch. We'd be slowly learning German, playing football. But what I had to do was to stay out there, I had to go get a visa. So I went to get a student visa, and then having a student visa, I had to go and study German. And so I'd be playing football, but going and studying German. So I went, studied German, meeting people, seeing different walks of life, and then I'm playing football. So that was really the way I integrated myself. Again, I was just the person, we were just in our own worlds, in our imagination, saying how could we reach the top in Germany and play football at the highest level. So yeah, learned German and that was my journey there. So my journey to what I'm doing now within my football career. So that journey, again, so Germany, was playing in different places, Sweden, Denmark, going through things, teams. I was playing in semi-professional levels there, 3rd division leagues, 4th division leagues, playing there, giving my all, going through now injuries and then having to come to Australia because I had got a big injury on my groin. Came back to Australia close to like professional trials and things like that, but going quite a few injury problems. But in between that time, and I headed back to America again and I got another team out there because of that talent, the ability. So really playing in that semi-professional level, going back to America. And through that journey, I started to document things. Came to Kenya to play for Harambee Stars. I came also to Kenya, and we had known someone, Carol Radul. She's in the media. She's kind of a friend of the family. So she knew the manager of Harambee Stars. You know, the media have access. So she knew him, got his contact, and then I was now going to be in the camp for Harambee Stars. And then they asked me just before the camp, where's your Kenyan passport? I was like, I don't have a Kenyan passport, I have Australian. Finally ended up getting it, and the person was just a close connection. We didn't even have to pay, boom, got my passport within a day. So I didn't get my passport in time. And then what happened was, by the next camp, they sacked the coach. I believe it was Ghost, Mule, they sacked the coach. Then they get a new coach. So I'm like, but we had little people in there. I remember going all the way, we found out where the Harambee Stars Federation is, driving all the way there. Like, look, we had this contact. I got my Kenyan passport finally. I remember even being so crazy going to their camp, where they had camp, where all the players were. Like, come on, man. Like, you know, I worked so hard for this. We had to do so much to get the Kenyan passport. And I finally have it. But then they spoke to the new coach, but I didn't get the opportunity. And then I ended up staying. And then I was training with Tusker. I think even in between this whole period, I was training with Tusker in the Kenyan Premier League. I remember my first session there, I killed it, ball, and they were like, okay, yeah, he can keep training with us. So I trained with Tusker, who were the champions at the time, the whole time as I was, you know, training to get into Harambee Stars. And it just didn't happen. It didn't happen. So yeah, I was playing here in Kenya. Again, just training with more. I think it was Tusker, then AFC. AFC Leopards, trained with them, and then came back to Australia. And so through that time, again, I've been documenting this whole time, mind you. So that's when I started my YouTube journey. And so my YouTube journey was documenting my football training videos, posting them. And then I've got quite a decent amount of people following me, watching my football videos, my training videos, me documenting my journey. You know, I really wanted to show people that journey. So that was my introduction to media, and it was my introduction to marketing, which I didn't know I had. So by me documenting my life, what would I do? I would document my training sessions. Through documenting my training sessions, now I would start to edit it. Now starting to edit it, I fell in love with editing. Like getting a video, and then not only from football, then I started to go documenting my life. Just going to a party with mum, all these different experiences, getting those videos, editing them, putting them on YouTube. But then I knew, okay, I'm gonna get a lot of people to watch it on YouTube. So I'd make these little short clips and post it on social media to get people to go and watch it on YouTube and keep following the journey. So that was like, because of my passion with football and documenting my whole life naturally, then I discovered this other passion of media, of editing. Then I realized later, okay, this is marketing, and that's a whole different story in itself. But that was really kind of my transition. And then I was still doing the same thing, playing for teams in Australia, still playing, injuries happening. And then it just got to a point where then I said, hold on a minute, I'm fighting a different war here. We're in war right now. And I want to be in a position where there's not someone who's in control of my destiny. Because on the football pitch, at the end of the day, if the coach, you can be as good as you want, you can be killing it in training, which I believe I experienced in different places. But if the coach says no, then no. So there's always someone ahead of you. But in kind of this marketing and media, and now starting to run your own business, which just started as a passion, no one can tell me anything. I can edit on my laptop 12 hours a day if I wanted to. No one could dictate my future. So then I decided to see, okay, this is what's going to bring me financial freedom. This is what's going to feed me. And then I'm still young. I'm still a baller. If I want to get back into it, I might buy a team or go in, and I'm a marketing person, will go in and run the podcast, and they'll let me play, and they'll find out I'm a baller. And who knows, like, I still haven't even fully retired in a sense, because I know I've got the ability if I wanted to switch it on like this. But I know this war is more important. This business is more important. And so that's really been my transition into it. So for me to think about that at a young age, or around that age, I started to just look at it and I say, what's really going to feed me, right? And most players, again, make the mistake of football, 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 football. So my advice to, those teenagers or people, anyone at that level is, yes, be the best at what you want to do. Be the best football player you can be. Put your heart and your passion into it. But at the same time, start to really look at what can feed me longer than my football career. And more often than not, that's a business. Being an entrepreneur, or even, again, you see maybe some players trying to go into the media, like that example we just gave, off camera. Like that person could have gone into media and like you should be way bigger than that, what you're saying, but that money doesn't last forever. And so they get stuck. And I think about it now even further. And I think about my life now and I said to myself, if I would have got all the money that was coming to me at that age, being that footballer that I was always going to be and earning that big money, I could have even maybe been broke later down the line, or I would have lost it. I think about that, and I think God has things for a reason. God didn't give me that football thing at that time, at a young age, for a reason, because you have to go through things in order to be the person you're meant to be. So by the time that money comes in, you've got things set up, you've got a family trust, you've got things in order to run an empire, because it's the worst thing actually having that money and having that success and then coming down. But I think what I've gone through on this journey has led me to now that phase. Now, when again, all the blessings continue to come, I'm ready for it. I would think about is just, again, mentors, for people to put great mentors in your life who've maybe been there and done it and who can advise you like, this doesn't last forever. This income doesn't last forever. Being able to have that discernment to know that you are special, you have a unique gift, but how can you set yourself up for the long term? I think just not enough people think about the long term. And I found that that's very rare. And it's something that I see talking with high level CEOs all the time, because that's what we do, that long-term vision, right? And when you can think for 20 to 30 years, a football career or a sports career finishes 35, if at best, and that's if you keep your body right and you're a top player, so it's like, how can I think about when I'm 45, 65 later down the line? How can I build, if people just remember me for being an athlete, then I failed. That should just be one of the things that I was great at, and I accomplished different things. You see things like Kobe Bryant, like even him, as much as he was, again, probably towards the later end of his career, he was now starting to think about things and he was creating things already. And he's really the top of the top echelon of players, Kobe, but still, So yeah, I think having good mentors in one's life can help. So through my YouTube journey, through this time, documenting this small transition I'm going through, I keep documenting my journey. I'm working a job at the same time, documenting that. Then there was a point where I lost that job. And when I lost the job, that's when Dad said, why don't you do this full time? But then if I rewinded just a little bit, as I was building up my YouTube journey, going through subscribers, Dad came to me one day and said, son, why don't we start a podcast? And that changed the game now. He said, why don't we start a podcast? And I was at a time where I was loving the YouTube journey, and I saw that long form content was starting to become the thing. And I started to see, if you can dive into long form content, which is things like this, 30, 40, 50 minutes for people to consume, that's where their money's going. And that's where the attention is going. So how can we start to do that? This is still at a time where it's still really a hobby to me. Again, I'm working a job at this time and doing YouTube. And then we started the podcast. Started it anyhow, not much equipment, just the equipment we had. Building that podcast, I started to see, like, this is becoming a media company. This is something that our grandkids can watch. Me talking with my mom and my dad on the show. I started to learn about my parents. I started to see them as human beings, not as mom and dad. It really humanized it. So running a podcast, hiring an editor, and paying an editor and learning the craft, learning it, that started. And I said, okay, wow, this is it. This seems like a pathway. So I'm doing this. We have a family podcast and we're consistent. Only about 6% podcasts make it. No, it's about like 97% fail in podcasting because they don't make it past 6 episodes. So if you've made it past 6 episodes, well done. You're in the 1% of podcasts, because it's a long journey. But me doing that and starting the family podcast with Dad and being the visionary behind the podcast, learning thumbnails, this started to become my passion, and I started to love it. How can we keep growing this podcast? Even if we get low views, even to today, if we get low views, we don't care because we know where we're going. So being in that craft, still playing football a little bit, but that was starting to slow it down. But now really honing in on this journey. Then I lose my job. Then I'm like, okay, what do I do now? I have comfortable income coming in, but I have this. And Dad said, why don't you just go all in? Go all in. So then I remember I was in the gym one day, and a guy in a suit, he always comes in a nice suit. He's from Nepal, India. Always comes in a nice suit. So then I'd see him, and then I'd think, how can I do this as a business? And we had a podcast at the time. So then I meet him in the change room, and I say, hey man, what do you do? And he said, oh, I'm a migration lawyer. He's very proud. I'm a migration lawyer in Australia, big migration law firm in Australia. I got an office in Sydney, CBD. And then I said, oh, we have a podcast. I don't know what I was saying. I said, we have a podcast. Do you mind if we come in? I lost my job at this time. Then he was like, yeah, sure, come in. Like, come and see what's up. Come and interview me. So I came in his office, nice office in Sydney. And then, I was dressed in a really nice suit, which I always am. Then we have I said, can I get a quick interview, like advice as an entrepreneur? He gives his advice. I leave that room, and I'm just usually fast. I went out of that room, edited a video. I gave him a proposal at that time, just on how we could do something like this. I can't remember what it was, whether it was us helping have a podcast, something like that. And then within 2 hours, I edited a video, put subtitles, boom, posted it. Nice video. He said something really well. I sent it to him, and then he was just like, can you come to my office on Friday? I came to his office on Friday, and then he came and said, as an entrepreneur, I know what I want. I want someone who's fast, who's quick, who gets things done. You came to my office, edited a video within 2 hours, and I watched it like 10 times. It's like, I've never seen work that good. I need that as an entrepreneur. I want to hire you. Give me an amount that you want with your value, come away and give it back to me. And when I walked away from the office, that changed my life. Because I remember throughout that time, I was going in the city, just door knocking in Sydney CBD, going to different offices. Hi, my name's Sugira Rubasha, this is what I do. I remember some people sitting me down, maybe because of the way I was dressed, hearing me out, thinking about it, just going to different offices, knocking on doors. How can I get a client, someone to pay me to do this? And that one just kind of came authentically, naturally, boom. And so then still through that stage, I said, I got to get more clients. But then he came to me and then, offered me a contract. And then we started working with him, and that started me coming into his office and doing this, sitting down, asking him questions as CEO, what's it like, migration law firm, things like that. And that started now our business. Yeah, so we're still young at the time. I think I also had another client that came through, a family member. She had a podcast and wanted to start her podcast. And so she came to me because she saw the consistency in posting Rubasha Family Podcast. And in that, then I have this client. And still at those early days, it's not much income as much as you'd want. And you're just still going through it, still doing the same thing. But now I have people who I'm also helping, which was powerful, right? That I could give, and seeing the looks on their faces, seeing them smile, seeing them come away with they give me a video, then when they see that video, it's like, wow, I'm an expert, and it positions them and gives them that confidence. So that was a big confidence for someone else to believe in me. So now it was more just, how can I get more clients? And that is, business is hard. It's hard. I still had to come in and get a job, to help support it through, even after a year of doing it and being full-time into it and being part of a government program that can allow me to support my business. Had to still finish that and still get a job because of the challenge of just getting more clients and sustaining the business. Now you're bringing on a team, and then you have to support the team, and that's not easy. So that has been the journey of consistent, dedication. But then, through that time, just networking, I think, has been a powerful thing as well. Going and meeting people, presentable, in person. Like you say, going after what you want. When you go after what you want. So through this time, it's like you also learn your audience. So then I started to learn that my audience is CEOs. CEOs who are time poor. They're busy with their what they're doing with running their vision. So it's like we can come and do what I've been doing as a YouTuber for my life for free, right? And it's like, imagine getting people to pay you for that. And so that has been the best feeling in the world. So it's been on that, attracting the biggest, highest CEOs. And now we're at a phase where we've set up the company structure correctly and we're moving forward. So now being in Kenya, it's like, politicians, how can we help the biggest politicians, CEOs, build their personal brand, social media marketing, what I started to do with mum and dad, so that has been the thing, and just taking that to the next level from here. So the next step is continually to serve our clients. That's the thing. How can we serve people? How can we serve people with what we just talked about? Storytelling. Because everyone has a story. People, are fathers, mothers, gone through experiences. So if you're running a business, how can you just open up people to who you are? Like I've opened up here. How can you open up people to who you are? So where we're at now is, one thing you have to learn in business is finding your audience. Again, I really had to come in and say, who is my audience? Who are the people we serve? I look back at who we serve. They're CEOs, high level, wanting to establish their vision and get their voices out there to more people. Okay, so that's who our audience is. So now we're here in Kenya. We've been able to build our footprint here as being the premium podcast service, right? Helping people build their personal brand. There's other people who do what we do, but when you come with that spirit and the energy of who you are and the power God has given you, people are attracted to you. And it's about teaching and educating CEOs, politicians, these people that you need the same thing. You need people to see who you are, and you can run your own media. You can run, your story and get that consistently out to the next level, because this is something that personal branding is needed. You have a personal brand, so you always need to be working on your personal brand. Whoever you are in life, some people don't know they have. You have a personal brand, so how can you spread that out to more people? And when you do that, that's where the magic happens. So for us to be able to help people do that through social media marketing is powerful. So that's why we're here, to establish ourselves in Kenya, USA, Australia, and really around the world, as we have clients from around the world. The most fulfilling thing of having a podcast with my father, it's true, a father and son podcast. What's been amazing for me is the amount of history we've been able to make. To sit down with your dad, and it all started, again, I just think about it now, it all started by telling stories. Do you know why? I was just curious. So Dad, what did you do when you were younger? It's starting from there. Dad, what was childhood like in Rwanda? Then we're figuring out these different things. He's telling me how he grew up, his childhood. I'm relating it to me, how to deal with women, how to deal with mom, relationships. I started to see my dad as a human being. And then I said, wow, like he would tell me stories he never told me in real life, right? His stories he never told me outside of being on camera and just talking about it. Then we started to go and question things, even going in things in church, and how he grew up in a church his whole life. But we started to question things, what the church has been giving us, what the church has been feeding us, and seeing his story, like we just started to see, wow, the evolution. So we started to really, his big thing was, the churches. How are the churches deceiving us, right? What do we really believe? He would come out and say that he is God. And that became a big controversy, because people would say, how can you call yourself God? And then, you know what? Because the people would attack my father, we have a podcast. So now we could just address what people have been saying, maybe family or things on social media about. So I would question my dad, what do you mean by that? You are a God? And then we'd go back and tell me stories about, church and growing up in Africa and what we go through in our daily lives, how God is within us everywhere. Then we started to go through this, and having that as a father and son has been unbelievable. Then we got to a stage, my dad came to me one day and said, son, why do we still have our colonizers' names? I looked back and said, so my former name was Eve. All this whole thing, if you search me, is my former name has been Eve. Then I thought to myself, he said, why do we still have the names of our colonizers? And I said, he's got a good point. Like, there's no argument there. And then we have a podcast. So now we can go and talk about this. So then through different journeys in our podcast, we just have conversations as father and son. Starting off is health, church, growing up in the church, and we still have those conversations, right? Again, and that's a huge topic that Africans don't even touch, right? You're talking about, this is what we've believed our whole lives. How dare you guys talk about this? But me and talking that with my father and son, phenomenal. Then we went into this thing with African names. Why do we still have the names of our colonizers? So then we went having a podcast. What do? Sit down in a 45-minute conversation with my father, and we just start talking about changing our African names. He's telling me about his childhood and how we've identified with white names. To be honest, we're even on the podcast and saying, wow, these white people, colonizers, are so smart. You came in and took our names. The smartest thing people do. We'll talk about it on the podcast and say, and Africans will still fight to keep their colonizers' names. We'd have these conversations and people will fight to keep their white name. And I look at that and I just say, we bring that on the podcast, but I say, white people, the colonizers were so smart to be able to take people away from their names, and now you're going to defend the names that they gave you. So now you're going into the room saying the name of their ancestors. We talk on the podcast with Dad. Can you imagine I walk in a room and a white person or Arab person comes and tells me their name is Sugira, or tells me their name is Mweni? You feel proud. Imagine he's saying my ancestors, it's kind of a superiority conflict, right? We look back as a young child, people say, what's your name? I say, my name's Eve. Where's that name from? France. And from a young child, I never really thought about it. Yeah, why am I taking pride in having a French name? But my skin color doesn't show I'm French, shows I'm African. So that is one of the biggest movements as a father and son we've been able to take on. And it's something that we're going to be remembered for 100 years. Are going to be like, that's the father and son who normalized African names. I go to a place now when someone tells me I mean to be respectful, because whatever you want to be called, you want to be called. I don't like to, push my agenda on people. But I ask people, my family, everyone, what's your African name? What's your middle name? Then they start telling me stories about how they got their name. You see, for example, the Indians, they were colonized, but they kept their name. And it all comes back to identity. If we look at politics, if we look at here in Africa, why are we maybe behind? Could that be a reason? We don't know ourselves. Because if you know yourself, you're not going to steal from your fellow brother. Our politicians in Australia, they don't go to church. The politicians in Australia, they don't go to church. But you know what? They never steal from their people. They will never go and take something that's not theirs. They will go and do what is right just by integrity, by conscience. But others, we go to church, we fill up the churches, but we can steal from our brothers and sisters. And we wonder why we're behind. But it's not, I don't want to say it's not our fault. Is it our fault? But it comes back to identity. When you know who you are, and you know you are God's son, you are God, and God lives within you, and you take back your identity in your African name to walk in a place, you know exactly your name, your tribe, what your name means, then people look at you differently. Because I walk into a building now, before I used to walk my name and say Eve, when I walk into a building now and people say, what's your name? Sugira. They get shocked. They look, because they're expecting for me to say a white name or Arab name. They're expecting for me to, so when I say Sugira, it's Rwandi's name. Da-da-da. And so that makes me proud. We talk about legacy. My dad has left that legacy onto me. And the amazing part about it is I'm not just saying he say, she say. You can go and watch this. And we have conversations about these things. Why do African players go and maybe struggle here back home? That I can only speak from, again, going back to that story of, let's say, even just mum and dad. Anything outside of that I may not know, but let's even go into that mum and dad. The fact that they can support their children like that. And that's the exact same thing they need to do here, is how can we support our young boys to give them the right infrastructure? How can we have the right systems and set up? The way, for example, in the Western countries, if you're good, you're talented, they will support you. And Australia, things like here you have in our, running, for example. The runners here, you should be supported with absolutely everything, because that's where the talent is, and pour into it. So the same with football. So yeah, I think that's the difference that I see. And then again, honing in on my parents was, without anything else, they would support us in whatever we did, especially in that football, and pursuing that as much as possible. Well, people can connect with me. I am on YouTube, Sugira Rubasha. You can find me on YouTube and just watch my life. We're also Rubasha Family Podcast. Yes, you can find us there. And then on TikTok, Instagram, Sugira Rubasha, the chosen one on Instagram, but Sugira Rubasha. I'm also on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, especially for the business people, business leaders out there, I'm quite heavy on LinkedIn. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can head over to our website at etsrubashamedia.com. And in terms of who we serve in our business, we're a social media marketing agency. You know, we help people and businesses tell their stories. Majority of our clients are high-level CEOs, politicians who are wanting to dominate the world, and how can they get themselves and their stories out there and what they do all over social media. That's really what we do, and so those are really our audience. But if you just want to follow the journey, you can find me on all the social media platforms, and yeah, I'll be happy to connect with you.